Modern awards. Modern awards are industry and/or occupationally based. There were over 4,500 federal awards with all the NAPSs and things that were moved across under work choices. That's been reduced down to 120, or I think 121 actually, modern awards. The modern awards provide a safety net for employees, but there is this intention that because they're much broader, they cover a broader range, more employers will probably move down the path of actually making their own enterprise agreements. And the system's designed really, I think, to encourage people to go down that path. Okay. Now, how do you know what award you're covered by? Well, you need to, in the first instance, there's a list of 121 awards you can look at on the Fair Work site. And probably in many cases you can work out fairly easily which award applies to you, but it might be a little bit difficult. Clause 4 in all the awards gives the definitions about who is covered and who is not covered in the modern award. There are some employers, if you work in a particular industry and there's an award for your industry, then that award probably covers most people who work for you. If you're someone like a manufacturer or a distributor of, for example, coffee machines, and you have a warehouse and various things, you might end up having 3 or 4 modern awards that apply to you. Each modern award has a flexibility clause, so this is different to the flexibility clause in the National Employment Standards. Remember, back in the National Employment Standards, the second standard was that there was a flexible arrangements for parents with preschool aged children. Okay, this clause in modern awards is a flexibility clause for individual flexibility arrangements. Got nothing to do whether or not you've got preschool aged children. It's just a flexibility clause for anybody. Okay, and there are certain limitations on the things you can have flexibility about. It can be overtime payments, annual leave loading, and 3 or 4 other things. The individual flexibility arrangement only requires an agreement between yourself, the employee, and the employer, and nobody else. So the sort of example might be, someone might say, look, for family reasons I would like to have Thursday off because it enables me to help look after my children or whatever, and I'd be happy to work Saturday. But under the award, if you work Saturday, you get paid time and a half. So you might have an agreement where the person works on the Saturday instead of the Thursday, but they still only get paid single time because you can vary overtime payments in flexible agreements. But it would always need to be to the benefit, a positive benefit to the employee, and I think in those circumstances, a positive thing for them. You can't just say to someone, look, oh, well, I'd like you to work Saturdays and I'm only going to pay you a single time for it, and we'll make that a flexibility agreement. That won't work. Each modern award contains consultative provisions relating to major change. So it is important, if you make a decision that you're going to shut down part of your business, that you actually start communicating that with your employees fairly promptly, because the award actually requires you to do so. And that you also need to have discussions with them about how you might be able to mitigate the impact of that change on the employees. So it's actually an obligation in the award to do that, and if you don't do it, you'll be in breach of the award. There's also the possibility for people who are on a salary of $108,300 to opt out of the award. That's excluding super. So if you're on that sort of salary, a person can choose to, it's really a bit like an AWA, isn't it? Except you're not allowed to use those words. It becomes like an individual agreement where they're not bound by the terms of the award, and you would need to put some other contract of employment in place so the person knew precisely what their conditions were, and it's got to be guaranteed. It's got to be a guarantee of over $108,000 per year. And of course, if you put an enterprise agreement in place, then the modern award does not apply. an enterprise agreement completely displaces a modern award. I guess you'll find that in the modern awards there will be conditions that are different. Allowances in the modern awards are often expressed as percentages rather than dollar figures. I just noticed in the paper the other day, I was reading an article where an employer is not employing some kids after school anymore because it's changed from 2 hours to 3 hours minimum hours of work. Like kids can't get there any early because they're at school. It's not open long enough to work the 3 hours, and they can only work 2. He's not going to employ them for 2 hours and pay them 3 because the award says he has to. So he's not employing them anymore on weekdays, just on weekends. So there are changes like that where the minimum hours of work that you are required to perform, etc., have changed, and you need to be very aware of what they are. So the other changes, for example, is that all casual loadings are going to 25%. Now, that's being introduced in a staged way over 5 years. So if you currently pay 20%, then you're going to have to increase by 1% a year over the next 5 years, starting 1 July. Minimum hours work for casuals, part-time employees, requirements in a number of awards in most awards for part-timers that it's in writing. So the days they work are agreed in front. In a number of awards, like the Clerks Award, if you're a part-timer and you work 3 days a week and you ask a person to work an extra day, they're entitled to overtime for those extra hours, which is a significant change for many employers, and that is one area in particular that you need to take very close attention to if that award applies. And probably most people who are here, if you've got anyone who works in the admin area, then the Clerks Award will apply to those people, and that issue around overtime is a real one for you to look at. So the classification structure might be slightly different. So you might have a classification structure, but if you look in the modern award, you might find it slightly different. And so someone might actually fall into a slightly different definition or a different level, depending on, and the number of levels might be different. So you need to go to the award and look at what the levels are and then compare. I mean, if you're paying $50 above the award rate, it's not going to matter. But if you're paying award rates, then you need to be very careful that you look at these things with a microscope. Changes in time off and all arrangements. Some awards do it on an hour-for-hour basis, some do it time and a half, hour and a half off for each hour you work, etc. So there's a whole range of issues where there are likely to be changes that you need to take note of.